Welcome. This is our 6th webinar in the series of financial help for tribal producers. We just finished in the last hour our 5th one, and this one is moving forward with your business part 2, putting it all together. This whole webinar series is part of a grant we received from Western Extension Risk Management Education Center that is funded by the United States Department of Agriculture, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, and you can see the award number down there below. Next slide. The project team is myself, Ruby Ward, and I'm a professor at Utah State University. We also have Trent Tigerstrom, who's the Associate Director of Tribal Extension at the University of Arizona, Vicki Hebb at the University of Nevada, Reno, and Juan Arias at the University of Arizona. He's one of the FERTEP agents there. So this is the collaboration between the 3 universities. It builds on past projects, and you can see the acknowledgements there with some of the people that were involved in the past projects. So going forward. So as I said, this is our 6th webinar. The previous webinars were Managing Your Money Part 1 and 2, and that was really kind of giving you the basics of building a strong foundation and using the MyFi app that's free and available on iOS and Google Play. We're going to be using that app again today, and so you'll be able to see it. And then then we also went over building your business foundations, part 1 and 2. Part 1 is 10 basic questions that every livestock operation should consider. And that just kind of says, do you have the basics in place? And then part 2 is the financial analysis and starting to use budgets and financial statements. And then if we go to the next slide, we get into today's webinars, moving forward with your business part 1 that we just barely had, putting your plan to work. And then we are now on putting it all together. And so all of this series is available on the AZ FERTEP Facebook page or the University of Arizona Tribal Extension website. And you can see the links to both of those down below. We're going to be doing another webinar on September 29th that will kind of wrap up all of this and just kind of say, how do you really go about doing this and creating your own budgets in your own operation? So keep that in mind, and we'll be sending out and posting those at these same locations, posting that information. So today's webinar, it's really going to be all of us kind of talking about different bits and pieces for each of the concepts, but it's really starting to look at how do I look at my operations in a whole and look at it a little bit more strategically and think about some of the tools that we've used in the past and other stuff to put this together. But in general, when you have smaller operations, we sometimes think of those as niche markets. And so those can be profitable because you're only doing a few things, and so sometimes you can have markets that you can sell those few animals into, sometimes for a little bit more money, to some people to get them butchered, by just a few animals, or your overhead costs can be really low because you're just keeping them, close to your house. You don't have to have a lot of extra overhead or equipment and things like that. But then as you start to get bigger and bigger and want it to be more of a full-time operation that's covering you, as you start to get bigger, you get a lot more costs. And it may be, but you're not big enough to really use some of all of those things that you have to buy efficiently. Because maybe when I was little, I could borrow somebody's trailer or borrow their truck when I needed to move my animals. It's not something I had to have myself, and some other types of things. But I start to grow my operation. I need my truck, I need my trailer, I start needing a loading chute. I need some other, infrastructure. I need some fencing. I need to find more pasture and stuff. So as we start to add those, we don't have enough animals to really make them pay and be a low-cost producer. But we're beyond that niche market with all these extra costs. And so you can really say, if I want to become more of a full-time operation, how do I really make it through Death Valley? And we see a lot of operations as they start to get a little bit bigger actually do worse, because they're trying to cover the cost of the truck, the cost of the trailer, all of these things that they didn't necessarily have to cover before because they were things they could just have for the few days that they needed them. They could borrow them or they had access to them from somewhere else.
And Ruby, I think one of the pieces on this too is on the smaller operations, you can handle a lot of the work yourself. and you have some other labor that, so you don't need to really hire anybody. As you start moving larger and larger, you're going to have to start adding in paid labor, and that's where some of your costs really can start to ratchet up pretty substantially. So, and that's where we see a lot of these the businesses start to waffle a little bit, because now the owner has to do all the work and all the marketing and doing everything. And now those demands are getting larger and larger, and you need some offset that with some other individuals, and that can really start eating into the budgets.
We've talked about this in terms of more livestock operations, but that labor is one of the things that I've seen when maybe somebody is selling a little bit at a farmer's market or something with their produce, and wants to have a full-time store or a stand or something. Just the labor to run that can be really prohibitive. And so labor is a big one there to think about. Good point, Trent. And so the other thing that this should kind of tell you is that this shouldn't scare you to death because everything has to die in Death Valley. But it does say that if you are thinking about growing and you want to get from your niche markets over to like a bigger, from that small to larger operation, you're really going to have to think through the numbers and really kind of look at those. And that's what the tools that we've been doing and going over can help you with. Because another problem that happens with Death Valley is just the management capacity. So you have time to go out and kind of personally oversee a lot of things. And when you start to get the other labor, they may not be overseeing things the way that you are. When you have a lot more animals to check on, you may not be watching them as closely as you did when you just had a few. And so those are some of the issues that you have. So as we think about getting bigger though, and how we can grow that operation to kind of meet our needs, how big do we really need to get? And we showed that a little bit in the last webinar when we talked about how to use the break-even formula. And so this is really kind of the same type of formula, but we've just put it into a little tool for you. And so you need to know how much you want to take out of the operation, and that's your owner draw desired. And so with the budget, the example that we are showing, that profit was $3,790. So that's the first column, the current situation. If I have to make payments, principal payments to the bank, principal payments are the part of the payment that actually causes the loan to go down, not just pay the interest cost on the loan. So your payment to the bank for any loan is going to be part interest and part principal. The principal part of that that's actually paying the loan off needs to be there in the bank principal payments required. And in this case, we're not including that in our examples. And then our overhead or fixed expenses from the example that we've been using for the 50 cows with a 75% calving rate was $7,200 a year. And so we take the profit that we need, the $3,790, that's A and B together. And then we add our overhead expenses, the $7,200 in line D. And then in line E, we have those two added together. In that case is $10,990. And so our margin as a percentage was how much we make after our variable costs. And so for every $100, and we use the same thing in the sensitivity tool that we used in the last hour. So we had, for every $100 of sales, you have $60 of variable costs that it costs to just maintain the animals, your labor, things like that. And you're left with $40 out of every 100 that can be used to cover your profit and your overhead. And so that 40% is there from that example. And the more details on the example are, like I said, in the other webinar. And so when we divide that line E by line F, that tells us that we need at least $27,475 of sales in order to make that profit of $3,790 at the very top of the sheet. And so that's where we currently are. But if we're thinking about we really need or would like to get a little bit bigger, we can put in sales for $5,000, or profit that we are going to take out of the business for $5,000. And then the next column is profit that we're going to take out of the business for $10,000. And so just using those numbers the same way. So in the sales for $5,000 income, we take that $5,000. We aren't, like I said, including any principal, but if we had that, we could include it. So our total profit required is $5,000. Our overhead expenses are $7,200, so we add that to it. And there on line E, we get $12,200. Divide it by our 40% margin, and we get $30,500. And so that's showing us how much we'd have to increase our sales in order to get up to that profit goal. And then if we went up to 10,000, kind of the same way, we go through the same numbers, and we'd have to have $43,000 in sales. So all of the numbers in tan are ones that you can actually put in to your own situation and whatever kind of situations you want to try. And so if you want more than $10,000 of income, you can put that in and see. As you get a lot bigger, though, you may end up having the overhead expenses needing to go up too, because like I said, you might need to have a truck or a trailer, some of those types of things. You've got to pay for those. There's other expenses there. So you have to be careful because there's only so much you can do with your current level of fixed or overhead expenses. So any comments?
Ruby, those are good points. And remember that what we're looking at here is the targeted, in that slide, what we were looking at was the targeted profit that you wanted out of it, what that withdrawal that you wanted out of there. So we're looking at the number of sales you'd have to increase. So it's a good way of looking at that when you're trying to plan out where you want with this business to go. Okay, so I'll take this slide, Ruby.
Okay.
So questions to ask about when you're doing these marketing and you're looking at trying to increase those sales in order to get that profit, right? So you have to think about what is it you're selling? Are you just selling, taking a calf to market and putting it there? Or who might want it? So maybe there's other options besides just taking sell ring. There might be other individuals you could sell to. So looking around at those different questions. Where will I sell it? If you have a common place on there, we talked about record keepings and trying to track that. So make sure you're tracking where you're selling your animals so you can start tracking the prices you're receiving for these, because sometimes it will vary on there and you might be able to find an additional place that you could increase where you're selling it and the price you receive for that. And then how can I let people know I have it? Yes, and this is be a case if you're looking at niche market, maybe you're going to do some boxed beef or some direct marketing on your beef. You do a website, you increase that. We talked about adding a website and how much of an increase in revenue you would need for that. Well, part of that is exposure to these commodities that you would have available, which could be cuts of beef. It could be a lot of different things that you would have on, depending on what your operation is doing. So it's important to how you're going to get that word out and who you're going to get it to. And then can I get them to buy my product and make money? And that comes in a lot because there's a lot of competition out there, and you have to be aware of that, because just because you need to sell it for this price, as we saw in the break even, doesn't mean that necessarily the market's going to give you that price, right? So you have to think about that and see what's going to make individuals want to buy your product more so than the other ones. And that comes in a lot with record keeping. It comes in with just consistency, and a lot of things come into that, but you need to be aware that just because your break even looks very high on your prices doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you're going to receive on there. So, and that's part of going back to the sensitivity tool that we looked at. And as we're looking at on our next tool here that we're going to have is the MyFi app, the MyFi Assist app. And so we've talked about this before, but this side we thought it would be a lot more important to go into some details on how to use it and what it looks like on entering the data, some of the questions that we have that we'll be able to answer. So Ruby's going to be switching over and pulling her phone up here and going to actually see the app and works. And then we're going to run through several different scenarios and different pieces of the app and how that might work.
Juan, can you let my phone share? So I'm going to bring it up on my phone, and so you'll see my full phone screen, and I'll show you kind of what the icon looks like, and then we'll go into the app as we start it.
And this is a free app, so you'll be able to download it either Apple or Android, either way. It's available. Just go into the store and you'll be able to download it.
So this MyFi Assist app has the money bag. And so I just touch it and opens it. And you'll see that we come into a menu. And then down here at the very bottom, you'll see a personal preferences. And so I'm just going to touch that. And the thing that this app allows us to do is to put in an item and put the value of it. And then all the results, it'll show us in terms of that item and that amount. So in this case, I've typed in cabs, but it could be hay bales. And then when I'm done, I just click done. And then a hay bale, I could say that it's like $14. Done. And then the menu, when I touch that, it'll take me back to the main menu here. And if I want to go back to cabs, then I could go back to cabs too. And so just click personal preferences and I could change that back.
An important part of what we're talking about on this, you want something that you value, that's important to you. So, and that's what you want to look at what your trade-off is, because as you're looking at these options over here, you have to you potentially have to give up something for that. And you want, what are those things that are most valuable to it? We use this one a lot with youth, and it could be, you know, hours, it could be horses. I used to put a horse in there or whatever you want, roping. Going to the movies maybe or something, or even just a bunch of different babysitting hours or work hours. How many hours would you have to work? And so you make it as something that's you value and that you like to do, and that means a lot to you. And that's what we're trying to get with this one.
So I'm going to go into paying for a loan. And this is what the screen looks like. All the screens are going to be very similar. But they're going to give you different types of answers. But you're going to have some cells up here that you just touch, and I can put in numbers. And then hit calculate, and
Okay.
It'll give me my results.
So Ruby, how about we do an example? I know there's the CFAP program's been out.
Okay.
Some folks have been able to take advantage of that, and say that you got a CFAP payment of say $20,000.
Okay.
So and maybe you wanted to get a new truck because you want to increase your bit. You know, your old truck's kind of been in the repair shop a lot and everything. And you just think it'd be a good to upgrade that. And say that truck costs $40,000.
Okay. So we're going to put $40,000 in here.
And say the interest rate is, say we're going to a bank and it's a 7% interest. And the down payment, the 20 there is the CFAP payment that you receive. So the truck's at 40, your down payment was the 20 from the CFAP. So say you want to do this in 3 years. This 3-year loan is what you got it for a truck.
Okay.
Okay. So what's that going to do for us?
So your monthly, so now you can see the screen down below. The calculate button gives you all your results. And so we're going to have still, after we use all the CFAP payment for that towards that truck, it's still over 3 years is going to cost us payments each month of $617. And then over the whole 3 years, we're going to pay $2,231 in interest. And so the total paid for the truck is $42,231. So it's the cost of the truck, the $40,000, but we're going to pay an additional $2,000 in interest, and that interest is going to be 6% of the original cost.
Now, what if we happen to say we couldn't get 7% because we weren't watching our credit score like we were trying to work on that? So maybe it went up to 9%, say.
So I changed the 7 to a 9 and hit calculate. So now our payments are $635, and our interest went up to 7% of the original cost. And now each year I'm going to have to sell 12.7, so about 13 cabs per year in order to make those payments.
Great.
And so this, if you've been watching through all the webinar series, now you can see how we can say like, oh, well, is that worth 13 cabs to us a year to have that truck. And this is also why we kind of get into that Death Valley, because, you know, we said that maybe with a few animals, you can borrow a truck and borrow a trailer, you know, so you don't need to have own them yourself. But as you get a little bit bigger, you have to buy some of these things, and just buying this truck, it's going to cost you 13 cabs a year that you have to sell just to pay for the truck. So your break even has actually gone up per year by 13 cabs.
And then the other point to look at this is you need 12.7 additional, say 13 calves that a year. Can your operation do that? Do you have the fertility? Do you have the breeding stock to be able to increase by 12 calves per year? So that's something, is your operation capable of doing that? So you might want to look at that, look at your operation, see how that goes.
And then so you can look at things like, well, what if I pay it off in 4 years?
Spread it out a little bit more.
Then I need 10 calves a year, but it did increase it gave me less calves per year that I need, but I'm doing them over 4 years. So my interest cost actually went up to 10% instead of the, I think it was 7% that it was before.
Yeah, 7%. Okay, so say let's take that same 20,000, say my truck's fine. And I want to actually put that in the bank, either a bank or a CD, an index fund. And I want to see how much I can, maybe that's a better use of my investments on that, or my $20,000.
Okay,
so that would be under what part?
The menu, you actually just pull slide this tab over. You can see that I kind of slide it back, and then you can just touch that tab up in the corner and pull it over. And so in this case, I want to do the app screen is the savings amount.
Okay, so let's say first it's a CD at 2%.
Okay.
And I don't know, let's say maybe 5 years.
Okay.
And then we'll say that same 20,000 is what you're going to put in there. And you're not going to add.
Oh.
Huh?
I'm on the wrong thing. I need the savings payment. Or did I just do? I need the savings amount.
Yeah.
Your interest rate is.
A CD, we're saying it's a CD at 2%.
Okay. And we're going to do 5 years. We have 20,000 that we can do, and we're not going to save anything per month.
Yeah, not at this time.
So you're going to, at the end of 5 years, you're going to have $22,000. And so you'll have earned $2,000 in interest. It's telling you need 0 calves and 0 calves each month and year, because in this case, we don't have anything that we're saving per month. And so we don't have to sell any more calves than after we put in the $20,000 to get that $22,000.
Okay, so say like we want to be a little more aggressive in our investment, so we're going to do like an index fund or just a little higher rate of return one, and let's say it's 8% now. So what do we get out of that one?
So that brings you from that $22,000, you're bumping up to almost $30,000. And so over that 5-year period, you actually would make almost $10,000 in interest.
And what if, now let's just say, what if you just let that sit for a while and went for another 10 years?
So if you did it for 10 years total instead of 5 years, you would have $44,000. And so your interest now over that 10-year period, you actually would have made more in interest than you started with. So you'd more than double it.
So that's part of what sometimes you hear them say, make the money work for you. This is kind of demonstrating what that would be. It's an option, you know, and the one we're doing a pickup and we're cutting it in price in half. This one, we're actually putting it away, and we're able to increase the revenues on that just by holding it off into something that's generating interest alone and having the money work for you. If your operation can handle that, that would be something that would really need to be looked at.
So if you add another 5 years to that, so you save it for 15 years, that's worth $66,000. And if we save it for 20, that's actually worth almost $100,000.
Yep. What if you did an extra, say, $50 a month added to that?
That'd be $127,000. And so you would have paid $32,000 overall to the put into this fund, the 20,000 we started with, and then this $50 a month is another 12,000. And so that's a calf a year, but a calf a year over 20 years plus that 20,000 we put in there turns into $128,000.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Okay.
So what else would this app do?
So if we go over and let's look at an operating loan. So let's go back to paying for a loan. But say in my operating loan, I have to borrow $60,000. So I'm going to put $60,000 in there. And then 0 down payment. Well, let's just start out and say that instead of doing, so let's do that 7%, but an operating loan is probably over a single year.
So Vicki, is this, do you use this kind of calculation?
Yeah, so I was going to add in there that, I love this app for trying to figure out, how I'm going to do my operating loan within a year, making the money work the best it can for us. We talked about last hour that, I'm constantly comparing supplements and that type of thing. And so this really helps me to know where I'm at with my operating loan, how much I should spend, when I should spend it, and what it's going to cost me.
So with this $60,000 a year from the bank, you can see down here, it's going to be 104 cabs a year. And so so Vicki's going to, if this was if this was her operating loan, she knows that she'd have to sell 104 cabs just to pay the bank back. Yep. Before anything else. For the
and I'll tell you, as producers, it really helps to put a number to your spending. It really makes you think twice because you want to make the right choices and not waste that money. Because, I mean, really look at that, 103, almost 104 calves. That's half my calf crop right there. So this app is awesome for keeping it on your mind every day.
And so if you kept your spending down to 50,000 instead of 60,000, it drops down to 87 calves that you would need. And so, but sometimes, you can't just decrease your spending because you could want to decrease your spending. But like as Vicki said, the point is to really kind of say, what makes sense for me? Is there a way that I can raise these calves with less money, with less operating loan? And so I have to give the bank fewer at the end of the year. Because really kind of think, this is how many calves I have to give the bank at the end of the year. Where are those calves going to come from?
Yeah, this app really helps you make your ag operation work for you. Whether it's hay, whether it's lambs, whether it's, calves. I mean, you're able to put in numbers so quickly and realize if it's going to work or not.
So I think 60,000 would be a lot to be able to do this, but sometimes we've seen people with maybe their credit scores or their credit history is bad, so they have a really high rate. Or I've seen people try to use combinations of different credit cards to finance their business with, and so this is 18%. This is only over a single year, so you're not seeing as big of an effect on the number of calves because you're paying it all off in a single year. But if you instead, that's 110 calves, but say we pay that back to the bank or back off our credit card over 5 years, that's 30 calves a year, but 52% of what we pay back to the credit card company is going to be just extra calves. So the calves that you're using for your interest now, half of those calves are or a third of those calves. So 10 calves each year is just going towards interest.
So as you're looking around for, if you're trying to get an operating loan, and I know Vicki does this as well as others, is looking at the options that are out there. And there's several options between banks and FSA and some of these other ones. And what's the one of the lowest rates you've seen or that you've gotten, Vicki?
So about 2 years ago, our bank came to us and just said, honestly, you need to apply for FSA. It's 1 point over prime, and that would have saved us 6 points on our interest rate, which converts to almost $100,000 probably over the life of the loan, because we have operating loans and cattle loans. So this is something else you have to factor into there, is the FSA loans take a lot longer than walking into a bank, but it is well worth the time. So you need to prepare for that, and you need to look into them, because I mean, 6 points on a loan is a lot.
So this is the results for that 1 year operating loan at 2%, 2.1%, which I think is the current FSA rate. So that was 101 calves, or your interest paid is $684. And I'm going to go back and put in the bank's 7%, so just we can see the difference. And so that our interest paid is now $2,300, and it's 103.8, so 104 calves. So by going from FSA to the bank, it was 4 calves per year.
Yep.
And so is it worth trying to plan ahead and get that loan for 4 calves per year?
Absolutely.
What would you do if somebody says, I'll give you 4 calves, you know, that you can sell? Would you be willing to go spend some time at the bank or spend some time with
Of course, exactly. And it's just added profit. And in the long run, not only are you getting a better loan, but you're learning to manage your money and your programs, because part of that as well that we visited in our previous webinars is doing a action plan. And, you know, for us that are on tribes, we have to do it for BIA, but we also have to do it for FSA if we have loans with them. And that makes us accountable. But not only that, that makes us eligible for USDA programs. And that is really important. We have some great programs that are going on right now. We have some more to come. COVID prices are going to be challenging, but you know, as long as you have your stuff in and you know where you're at, you'll be able to apply for these programs.
So let's see. You also have to buy cattle once in a while, right? So, and that's a different type of loan that we're talking about. We're moving away from an operating loan. This is a little longer investment. Do you kind of walk through that, what that might look like on this app, and Vicki?
So maybe we're still 7% with the bank, but now it's maybe over a 7-year, 4-year, 5-year.
Yeah, I want to do 5-year. If my cows aren't paying for themselves in 5 years,
okay,
then I can't make my money back. So I want 5 years.
So if we did 20 cows at $1,100 a piece, that's going to be about $22,000 for those cows. And I'm going to put 0 down payment.
Yeah.
So it's going to cost a monthly payment of $436 for to buy those calves. You're going to pay $4,000 in interest, which is 20%, 19%, almost 20% of the original cost. So by the time you borrow them, even though the interest rate is 7%, because we're paying it off over 5 years, it's really costing us extra 20% for that animal. And then we're going to give the bank almost 9 calves, 8.7 each year, just to pay for the loan over those 5 years.
And I know that's aggressive, but you really want to look at how quickly your cows can work for you.
And again,
You're just giving money to the bank or FSA. You're working for them. You want your cows to work for you.
And we could, so that was 8.7 there. But
Yep.
if you took the time to go through FSA, it with a 2.1%, that interest cost is only 5% of the original cost. So instead of paying 19% for the calves of what they cost, we're only going to pay 105% by just taking the time to go through and use an FSA loan instead of a bank loan.
Exactly.
And so that's one less calf per year. So again, what are you willing to do for a calf per year? Is it worth, trying to, go around here? But that over the long term, though, that can make a big difference.
Yeah, and I think that I've just said this. There's more benefits than just a loan because you're going to get your affairs in order. You will have an ongoing record keeping system that FSA helps you with, and you'll be able to apply for those USDA programs that can be a lifesaver in years when our cattle markets tank, in years of COVID. So it's really important, and it's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. I mean, your file can be this thick, but I mean, it's worth the time. And if you're not getting assistance from your local offices, please let us know so that we can assist.
And again, just it's not what I would recommend, but I've seen people use their credit cards for things like this because they said, I got a new credit card and I bought multiple credit cards and stuff, or, have something. And you can see that then those calves are costing an extra 52%, or those cows are. So if you had $1,000 cow, it's really, you're going to pay $1,500 for that cow before you're done if you put it on a credit card.
Exactly.
And if I change this 5 to a 7, you can see that that actually jumps it up to 77% for just the interest. So 170, so an extra 77%. And, cattle is, sometimes it's hard to make things profitable and make sense, cash flow cattle all the time. And so if we're doing something like this versus FSA, having that cost be 77% higher because of the interest in the financing, that can make the difference between something being profitable and something not being profitable.
And a really simple way to kind of figure that out in the way banks do it is they take the price of cattle on that day and how many you have and where your debt ratio is. And then you know what you can borrow or can't borrow. So, I mean, that's super important to understand as well, even as going into a bank. You can figure some of that out yourself.
Yes. And sometimes it can be a risk of not taking the time and analyzing how much it would cost to take that loan out. Some people make impulse loans and they don't realize how much they're going to pay at the end. For example, we're talking about the truck, purchasing a truck, and the truck's fine. And right now, if you don't have a management plan or a plan or money saved up and your truck stopped working all of a sudden, you want to take out a loan or you end up using your credit card. Which one are you going to make? So
let's do paying off a credit card. So let's assume, Juan, that we
18%.
are using our credit card. Credit card, I think that it varies, but about 18% interest.
Yes. And
we had like a $3,500 payment or repair. And then say we're going to do the minimum monthly payment of $53.
There you go.
So it tells us that this was paying off a credit card, but this will tell us how many months it's going to pay that off. And a lot of times these credit card payments, the minimum payment is not meant to pay it off almost. It's meant to just keep you in debt. Because this is almost 10 years at that minimum payment to pay the credit card bill off. And in the end, our interest cost alone is going to be 374% of the original cost. So that $3,500 repair would cost us almost $16,600 over to pay it back on that credit card. Even though it was only $53 a month, that's a lot of months that we're going to be paying on that. And so
Yes.
every year for 16 years, we're going to be giving a calf to the credit card company.
It was a quick fix, but you end up paying for it in the long run.
Yeah.
So
And so if we go back and do that same, so we could also look at if we did $106. So we just pay double what the minimum payment is. We went from 300 and some months to now we're down to about 4 years, a little less than 4 years, 4.5 years. And our interest cost now is only 39% of the original cost. So we were at 374%, so we've gone down quite a bit. It's going to cost 2 calves per year, but only for 4 years instead of 10 years. And then if we
what if we increase the payments?
higher, we could pay it off in about 2 years, a little over 2 years. And now we're getting down to where we're only paying an extra 22% for that repair. But then I think I cut you off to just show you how bad it was, Juan. So what were you suggesting we do?
So if we end up like for Vicky, like she was saying, she took her time to do the research. She went to the bank and look at the interest rate. For example, we go to 7 or 6% interest rate. How much are we saving? If we do that, we don't make an impulse purchase or loan. We are able to think it through.
So if it was like a 7% interest, that $159 would pay it off in under 2 years. And our interest cost is only going to be 7% of the original. And so it's going to be 3.2 calves per year, but we're only going to pay, 6 calves total for the whole bill, which is a lot different. $250 doesn't quite get us paid off in a year. So $300, if we were at the bank, $300 a month would pay us off in a year for that repair bill.
So Ruby, I think important part too is if you're in this app and you're using this one, Ruby alluded to just a minimum payment, but if you see an error on that shows up in here, if you have a loan and you put something down there, $25 is all you can afford, or 10, yeah, you get this. That means you're not even making a minimum payment on this, and so that's not going to work. So the credit cards, banks won't accept that. So when you see this, this is what that's saying. So you need to really bump that up to get the minimum. And you can play around with this before you even go into the banks and get an idea how much you're thinking, how much each month you can really afford to pay on that, right? And then you look at the different interest rates. So
this wasn't one that so if I did like, sometime we talked about like going to the, needing to buy that truck or trailer, I guess.
So trailer, yeah. So if we end up, our truck is being okay, but we want to increase our operation, we make another impulse buy of taking out a $20,000 loan on 18%. Are we able to afford that for 3 years?
So let's do paying for a loan and 18%, 3 years, 20,000.
Sure.
You're going to pay 30% more on that for the interest. And then again, like if that was 5 years, it's going to be 10 calves a year and you're going to pay 52% of the original cost in interest.
This is just estimating at 20,000. It can be a used trailer. It's not even a new trailer. So in the long run, this trailer might end up falling apart on you. So thinking it through is always important. Going to your bank, looking at FSA loans.
So here's like a 10,000 for a used trailer. That's going to be 6 calves a year, monthly payments of $293. But if we went to the bank, say 6%, that would be down to $234.
Ruby, I'd go back to and say maybe I want to see because I have to buy a lot of hay and everything, and maybe
Okay.
the trailers for hauling more hay and these kind of things. How would I go back and see how much hay that's going to cost?
So I just used my tab and hit personal preferences. So that brings up this screen. And so instead of calves, I'm going to just change that to hay bales. Hit done. And they're not worth $600 a piece. We'll say they're worth $14 a piece. And then my menu here, and then I can go back into paying for that loan. And so the interest rate, I think we first did 18%, 4 years, $10,000 trailer, 0% down. So now the payment is still $293, almost $294, but you will need 21 bales of hay each month or 251 bales of hay each year. So we can change that item to whatever makes sense for your operation. The other thing that you can do is like Juan was talking about a little bit, is over here, I just chose how much can I afford? And so this is gonna ask me for my interest rate. And so let's assume that, again, we'll just do the bank at 6%. And then we wanna buy that trailer, 4 years, or the truck. And how much did you say the truck was gonna cost you, Juan? The impulse purchase?
The trailer,
Yeah.
20,000.
Oh, this is the down payment. So this is, say we have $2,000 we have now. And then how many hay bales can I give a week? So let's say we can do 5. That's how much of a truck we could afford. Because if we do 5 hay bales a week, that's 20 bales a month or 240 bales a year. And so when we go look for, this was trailers, not trucks. So when we go look for trailers, if that's what we can afford, we can buy a trailer for $14,000 or less. We can't buy a $20,000 trailer. And so sometimes it's hard so you can do this before you go look for something to really kind of see how much am I willing to do it. And if you don't want to do here, we can also switch back to dollars. And so we can say, well, I think I can spend $200 a month. And so we can calculate it in terms of that too. So this way, if you're not doing it as an impulse purchase, you can really kind of look at how much can I really afford to pay for something that I'm buying. And that was the can I afford.
Yeah. I think this will also help if you wanna break even, if you wanna have some extra funding in your operations, or you just wanna stay making payments depending on how many years you want to do it. It gives you a good idea of what you're putting yourself into.
So any questions that we have? I think we're getting ready to wind down, but again, you can see the icon at the top of the screen here, the MyFi. So it's MyFi for My Financial Assistant. And you can get that in the App Store on Android or Apple's and the iOS store. And it's just meant to be a tool. All of these webinars are going to be available on the Arizona Tribal Extension website or the AZ FERTEP Facebook webpage. And again, we're going to have another webinar the 29th that'll kind of look at bringing your whole plan together. And